Hi, everyone. I am starting early this morning because we have Angela Giuliani here, and we're here to talk a little bit about all the imperial propaganda you're going to hear. And we're going to have to kind of clarify democracy and imperialism. So, how are you doing, Angelo? And thank you for joining. What time is it over there? I'll stick on my computer.
Hi, Esha. Nice to be on your show.
Thank you. Oh, what time is it over there?
Here right now. I'm in Switzerland. It's 2:44, but usually I'm based in China. So it's just I'm stuck here because of COVID.
Oh, that sucks. Or I guess it depends on what. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. And we had Angelo on the Historically podcast to talk to us about the color revolutions. And please check it out. That episode's entitled "What Color Is Your Revolution?" So with that, what I really liked, I've seen some more streams of yours with Brian Berletic, and you make a really good point because a lot of people were misunderstanding what happened in Myanmar and Thailand. And now with whatever is going on in Afghanistan, which a lot of things we don't know yet, we need to kind of stay calm and discover. There's already a lot of panic and whatnot. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about is what's wrong with Western people's understanding of democracy, in your opinion?
Yes, I think the problem is that before trying to export a failed model, because most Western democracies are failing. I mean, especially in the US, it's important that we understand our own model before trying to impose our model into other countries. So there, I used to be in politics in Switzerland. So Switzerland is a system of direct and indirect democracy, and it's working quite well. And at the same time, I've been in China for 25 years. So I have two different views. And what happens is that in Switzerland it's working well, and in China it's working well, meaning that every single country needs to find its own system. Because the system should be applied depending on your history, your culture, the reality on the ground, development stage. There are lots of conditions, different conditions. And so ultimately, whoever needs to choose the system is the people of the country. So there's only a Chinese that can be objective about his own system. Who am I, American or Swiss, to go to China and say, oh, you should have my system? It doesn't work like this. So I'd like to go just to when it comes to Western democracies and what it means to have a democracy. I think there are some preconditions to have democracy. I mean, real democracy again, because lots of democracy are only democracy in word. So preconditions. There should be no interference in a democracy because, foreign interference, because democracy is a process of self-determination. So once you have interference, well, it's not a democracy because you don't have in your hands the power of your destiny, because Washington is deciding for you in many cases. So sovereignty is important. No, there's no democracy if there's no sovereignty. There should be no money that in politics. So money should not influence politics. Once you have money influencing politics, then it means, well, it becomes the democracy of the elites. There should be no lobbying or the system of revolving door, those systems of corruptions. What is called lobbying in the US would be called corruption in China, and you would go to jail for that. You see, it's just how we name, those terms. There should be no biased media. When you have the elites that actually control all the media, then there is a problem, because information is power, and social media is the same. How ridiculous. You have like it or not, Trump but elected president not being able to express himself on social media, that is not democracy. Sorry. There should be a certain level of maturity of the population. People should be aware about how democracy work. There should be a check and balance system, where you have a system where people can actually revoke their the people the elected representatives. So a system of referendum, or a mix, like Switzerland. You have a system of a referendum where people can revoke unjust laws. Um, there's also, when coming to constitutions, what is a constitution? Constitution is the rule of the game. The rule of the game very often are written by the elites, while the rule of the game should be written by the people to protect people from the elites. So you see, there are many preconditions that many that countries don't have, and again, sometimes democracy, in having a democracy, you can have the mob rule. The mob, what is the mob rule? Is when you have 51% of the people that are voting at the expense of the 49%. So it's about protecting also minorities. So you see, it's in many ways, democracy can be a utopia, because you cannot apply to everywhere. You cannot apply to everywhere. I mean, it requires a certain level of maturity.
Okay, so with my research of what happened in the past 30 years in Afghanistan, is that it is somebody, like, there's an old saying in Afghanistan where they say that God made the world, and then whatever was left over, he put it inside of Afghanistan. So it is about thousand, not there's not one language, two languages, but there are about 100, 200 different languages. Each, there's a very important tribal identity. And so what people don't realize is that right after the Soviets left, the People's Republic of Afghanistan lasted for about 3 years. And then there was an agreement that was brokered in Islamabad. And what happened was that it was majority Tajiks, which are they're from an area from the north, who were put inside that coalition government. But the thing is that when the U.S. was giving lots of gravy train, each little warlord didn't really was happy with his little kingdom. But the minute the U.S. left, these warlords started fighting each other over turfs, because when you don't have a government, literally milk, apples, everything is traded like heroin in the West. And after about 3 years of that, like, that's when the original Taliban movement came, because literally there's a book written by this Pakistani journalist who mentions that there was these toll booth cartels, and to go from Afghanistan to Kandahar, it's about 200 kilometers maybe. They had to pay 20 different checkpoints, and like money. And if you're poor, you're just screwed. But then so these people actually were one set of like various warlords. They lost out when the Taliban came. But then after 9/11, and when the Bush government came, he put those warlords back in business. And well, it was back to the being extorted for toll, everything. And so while it may have looked like democracy, what was going on is that, like, there was a revolving door of governors. So this guy was a governor of Kandahar. When his term expired, he was like put into this other province, and this and this. And the cabinet was basically nepotism and revolving door of warlords. So that's how the second Taliban movement came to be. So it seems like the minute the US left, the reason it collapsed is because, would you fight over, if you're in the Afghan military, would you fight over like some warlord's bounty? I don't know. right?
People don't have to like Taliban. I'm not necessarily, I don't share the values of Taliban. Ultimately, Afghani people should decide for their own system.
Yeah.
But what happens is that when you look, when you have, I mean, they if you compare the government, the military they were financed by the US, they were actually there in position because of the money.
Yeah.
The Taliban, they're fighting for their country. It makes a
Mm.
huge difference. When you are fighting for your country, you are willing to die for your country.
Yes.
Militaries that were paid by the US, well, they were fighting for the pay. So this is why they didn't want to die for the US. I mean, and they opened their doors to the Taliban and didn't fight.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference. There's a huge difference there. Now, the difference in the Middle East, in many countries that actually we wanted to impose the Western style democracy, is that it's not people don't vote according to ideology. People, it's a clan, it's a tribal,
Yes, that's
and
what's going on.
you had people that govern like Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi. Their role was a unifying role.
Yes.
So the thing is that sometimes it can be counterintuitive for many people. Even they don't realize that sometimes you have a strong person on the top. It can be a king, or it can be someone like Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi, but their main role is a unifying role. It doesn't mean that they are ruling the whole country. Within the system, there's a democratic system within that. You cannot have, actually it doesn't exist really the pure dictatorship. Maybe an extreme
Saudi
with
Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. Exactly, you said it right. But in reality, if you dig in, there's always a system of democracy. I'm going back to the French Revolution under the king. The king actually, there was a system of check and balance. People had their say. Um, it's just that we tend to oversimplify, and sometimes history is written by the elites. It's not written by the people. So when you go back to the French Revolution, in reality they exchange one master against 100 masters, but at the end they were still ruled by masters. You see what I mean? So it's important to understand that even what they tend to call those systems in the Middle East as being authoritarian. Well, it's not that simple. It's not black and white. Same as in China. In many ways in China it's much more democratic than in the West. Much more democratic.
Yeah. One thing is that a lot of people don't understand what. Okay. So let me just show you two examples. Let's see. Let's see. The first example is very simple. Like this guy had a. I don't know if. Let me share the screen. Let's see. Had a milk. Let me show you what he said. Okay, so this guy had a milk company, and what he was saying is that in order to, let me ask you before that one more question. Like, what kind of okay, for me, he says okay. One question. FYI, during the Cold War, the democracy was not the lab of the West. That's correct. To me, what's the most surprise? Well, okay, there's one thing. There's of course the atrocity propaganda that we get from a lot of it's just not nonsense. Like, oh, what about women's rights? Well, did you know that the first one? Let me show you something really horrific.
In China, women had the right to vote much earlier than in the West. In Switzerland, the women had the right to vote only in the 70s. when you define that the time of democracy in the US, it's you had democracy in the US from the moment that African American had the right to vote and the same rights. So you have a very late democracy, and still, we can challenge that.
Okay, I found that article now. Let me give you an example of this. The first one is the fact that this guy is a monster. Like, he is the worst person on earth, close to being the worst person. But he was pardoned because it was a corrupt deal, and then he basically got his clan to come and vote for the president who just fled, Ghani. So, and what a lot of these warlords got away with is horrific rape, murder, anything you can think of. The second example that I'm going to show you is how Karzai, right after he came, look at this one. He courts the warlord vote, as in the warlords were literally picking the president. And in fact, the US did not want, like, the West was getting embarrassed by this. But he kind of did not want to die with the car bomb, die from a car bomb or something. And so it just, while it looked like democracy, it was really a bunch of warlords just kind of running up the fiefdom. And final one, this is actually from one of the US government think tanks. Look at this. This is what they said literally. And this makes you... okay, give me 1 second. So let's see. Found it. Okay. So this is the think tank from the, and I just want to read this carefully so that we understand what was going on. Look at this. Once the Taliban leadership decided to stand against the Afghan government and they were able to take the advantage of the growing disillusionment in the countryside. In particular, the dominance of one particular set of tribes caused members of the other marginalized tribes to look at the insurgency as a source of protection. And then this one, the weakness of the judiciary and the police forced many to turn to Taliban's provision of law and order, while widespread torture and abuse at the hands of the pro-government strongmen eroded government support. The widespread abuse is an understatement. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it and so what I realized is that this resurgence that happened in around 2010 is natural, given the way the entire country was run, like, by not ducking a bunch of drug cartels.
Well, look at the transition right now. What is happening in Kabul and the capital after the riots, the transfer of power between Trump to Biden. Well, there was how many National Guards in Washington? Like 10 or 20,000, right?
Lots of them.
Well, lots of them. It was basically Washington was closed. I mean, now if you look at what is happening in Afghanistan, it's rather quiet. I mean, relatively quiet. It's business as usual. There's a transition of power, and there was no. There was a pardon. The Taliban came in and they say, "Oh, you know what? Whoever collaborated with the invader, the US, we're not going to punish you." And that's a reality. You see, I mean, like or not, the Taliban, those are facts. And
they also released all the prisoners from all these prisons that the old government was holding, to just open the doors and say, go.
Well, the only thing is that now where I'm expecting the Taliban that they should deliver, and it's really important, is that they should not harbor terrorists anymore. Keeping in mind that when I say that, it's US backed terrorists.
Okay.
That is what I mean. Because in the past they kind of closed an eye, but the problem is that you need to remember that the geography of Afghanistan, it is very difficult to control the whole country. Why? Because there, in many places there is no electricity, there's no road, it's very remote, so you can have terrorists hiding. And this is why, if you really look at what it means to build infrastructure, if they were to build infrastructure and roads, it would bring prosperity, and it would eradicate those extremists. Because you see, extremists and radicals, you have them when you have a dissatisfaction in the population. When you bring them prosperity, you eradicate radicalism and terrorism. This is what China did in Xinjiang.
Oh
What
yeah.
China did, they build up roads, schools, infrastructure, and you give people jobs. Well, they're happy with that, because this is what people are looking for. When they are in small villages, very remote, well, it's very easy to radicalize them. Very easy.
Yeah. And one thing is that let's look at this other quick headline. While many thought that the U.S. was, the U.S. claimed they were building infrastructure, but what it was it's basically going to all these defense contractors, and these schools never got built. They were saying they built the schools, but it never got built. I went too much. See, ghost schools, and just things like these basic things. So the U.S. government was claiming that the schools never got built. There was a police officer who was talking about how he had to work out of a mud hut because they never built police stations for that city, and he couldn't actually hire officers to come and work in this mud hut, because why would they? And just even so, and then the way the U.S. was deployed, it was that if there was like a feuding clan, they would just call the U.S. up and say, "Hey, that dude's a terrorist," but it's actually a family fight, and the U.S. is like coming in and shooting up these like elderly people, but they're not terrorists. So there was so much that we are not. So like the way the Western media filters work is that there's so much information that we're not given, that when you ultimately realize what's the most important is having sovereignty and not having Westerners in your country. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
No, absolutely. You need to start from there. Sovereignty, that's the most important thing. And people, they need to decide for their own fate, what works for them. And the thing is that they were victim of again, there was a system that during they had it was much more modern. 40 years ago, Afghanistan was on the right path. It deviated from the right path because of the meddling. Remember, the Mujahideen were financed by the US. US meddling in Afghanistan is not 20 years, it's 40 years.
Or longer.
So they financed the Mujahideen against the communists. And then what came out from this is that the radicals, the most radicals, were Al Qaeda, and that's where it started. So you see, this is why we should really avoid this foreign meddling. So it's funny while when the ones that you funded actually turn against you, because Taliban originally, if you look at history, it's they are here now because of the funding of 40 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you brought that up, because in case anyone, the other part is like where they're like the U.S. failed. Not exactly. The system is meant like they served exactly its purpose. So this is a State Department cable from 1979, and let me just give me 1 second to share. but give me just 1 second and I will share it. So what happened is that in Afghanistan there was a leftist revolution, and I want to go over this because a lot of people think like it's what I call the bumbling empire theory. Like, it's not a mistake. Like, literally they knew this, they planned this, and the plan worked as intended. So this was when they were trying to go against the what do you call it, the Sour Revolution. Okay. Okay. So now let's just read it paragraph by paragraph. Maybe let me think. Should we do it paragraph? Yeah. Let's just do that, because it's really worth it to see like literally what was. Yeah. Just give me 1 second while I read it. But what you realize is that the plan worked as intended, and there was no mistakes. So here, let's see. Give me 1 second.
Sure. Well, you know, those mapping is nothing new. It's just what.
Okay, so this is the found the leak. Okay, so the first one is. I'm just going to read it quickly. The opposition movement, whose insurgency operations have been nibbled away at the government's capacity to control the countryside outside major population centers. Although the regime can still respond quickly and forcefully, as in demonstrated against in Kabul, to direct challenges near the country's political heart. Nonetheless, the opposition, albeit fragmented and leaderless, is widespread and apparently fueled by deep-held grievances that have caused thousands of insurgents to risk it all, which has caused thousands of insurgents to risk it all for what does it say? Hold on. Risk it all for risk it all in an attempt to overthrow a regime which professes that it has only the welfare of the Afghan masses at heart. But this is not the part. Okay, so now it gets really worse. Okay, let's see. Let's see. So, okay. Okay, the next paragraph goes that, okay. Okay, the opposition-led regime will be much more, oh, sorry, give me 1 more second. Okay. This is actually kind of okay, I know what I'll do. I'll just share the cable, so maybe that might help. Let's see. I know, okay. So can you now see this? I hope this is big enough. Yes. Okay, so the opposition-led regime might be much more amenable to the return of a U.S. presence in the development of this country. Conversely, this part's very shocking. Conversely, a regime based essentially on the fundamental tenets of Islam would probably not place the highest priority on social reform.
Oh my God!
Okay, it gets worse.
Is big. This is big. I mean, it says openly what it is about. It's not about bringing prosperity to people. It's about bringing chaos. You know, it's just because the fundamentalists don't have a priority, the welfare of people.
Okay, it gets worse. At the at the probably inevitable widespread vendettas aimed at Khalikis, which would have a negative human rights implication, no matter how justified retribution against some Khalaki officials might appear to be. Hold on, it gets worse. On the balance, however, our larger interest, given the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, but the DRA's extreme close ties to Moscow, would probably our larger interest. Okay, but then let's do the next part. This is horrific. Since the establishment of the Democratic People's Republic of Afghanistan, DRA, 16 months ago, the leadership and rank and file of the People's Democratic Party, key political elements in the country whose principal roots lie in a small group in the military segment of the intelligentsia and the urban youth, have been trying to alter Afghanistan's traditional political and social relationship. Okay, this is the given Afghanistan's poverty and backwardness, this revolutionary regime goals probably in themselves deserve genuine support from most quarters interested in bettering the lot of the Afghan people.
It's sad. It is extremely sad.
So the State Department literally said that given if you want to improve the lives of Afghan people, you would support the Democratic Republic, not people's. But, however, the opposition movement. Okay, where is it? Yeah. However, have created and fed a growing opposition movement whose insurgency operations have nibbled away. Oh, okay, we already got this. Principle as a. Okay, the DRA is not a monolith since a number of drastic disparate elements are struggling for various reasons for a drastic regime change. The rebel group actually engaged in combat against the Afghan army appears to draw their manpower from the village and tribe, which constitute anywhere from 80 to 90% of the population. Generally, illiterate segments of Afghan society are traditional foes of central government at Kabul, although many are apolitical if left alone. However, some villagers, for various reasons, undoubtedly economic, support the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, since the rural population also serves the government's manpower tool for its military and enlisted ranks. Thus, resistance, however widespread, has not completely stymied the regime, has an ability to meet its need for unskilled troops, although problems have been encountered. A number of narrow-based elements who also contribute to the opposition's effort. Relatives of those who have been eliminated or otherwise persecuted by this regime undoubtedly seek retribution, as it is a traditional revenge-minded society. The longer this leadership survives to pursue its past policies, the larger this group will be. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Okay, hold on. Groups with okay, and then here they literally this part's really horrific. Okay. Groups with less lofty goals are also harassing the government as regular bandits and criminal elements step up their operations along the country's several principal highways. So the U.S. government literally armed highway robbers. Thank you so much, Tony. Let me read this further. You're gonna. Major opposition groups within Afghanistan. Okay. Major areas of successful opposition operation have been the eastern province of Nuristan, where the Nuristanis for months appeared interested only in denying the regime access to their homeland, but also may be associated with the fighting in Panjshir Valley, Paktai province near the southeast, and movements more closely related to the refugees in Pakistan, as well as formal groups such as this warlord, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, headquartered in Peshawar. Okay, the lowest rank is probably fight. Okay, let's see. Okay, so fundamental opposition grievances appear to be sufficient to sustain long-term fighting. Two fundamental perceptions transcend these complaints, motivating opposition elements and fuel the overall insurgency to the greater insurgency than any other consideration. The virtually universal perception that they're godless, and let's see what else. By contrast, the regime's principal reforms, reducing illiteracy, land reform, elimination of bride price, and usury, have provoked some scattered opposition. But the ongoing insurgency is not primarily sustained by hostility to reduce these programs. What seems clear is that deep felt emotions are necessary because even Afghans take up arms against modern weapons fielded by our determined and ruthless government. And few policy options are available to regime to reverse the trend. Okay, let me go one more. It's kind of short. As to the religious issue, the leadership has mounted intense public relations campaign. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Hold on. This gets even worse, just believe it or not.
Esha, why am I not surprised? I'm really not surprised. This is the first time I see this cable, but I'm really not surprised. The biggest danger for the US is to have a socialist system that works. I mean, why do you think there's an embargo of so long in Cuba? The biggest danger is that in the US, people would see that there are systems other than capitalist systems that work. That's
okay. This one's horrific. Okay, opposition victory would have missed blessings for U.S. interests, but on balance would probably be favorable. In the larger sense, fall of a leftist, radical Soviet-backed regime would serve U.S. interests by demonstrating primarily to the third world that Marxist-Leninist adversaries' view of the inevitable course of world history is not necessarily accurate. A more truly non-aligned international posture would certainly be more welcomed. Likewise, renewed participation in the economic development field would probably result in the demise of the DRA. Even though very much firm information on the specific opposition goals is not available, within the country, one opposition group, and thus supporting a democratic process would be certain. Okay, hold on. Okay. Oh, this one. Okay. So they also said that there'll be a lot of debts, and there'll probably be a tarnished post-DRA human rights record. And let's see. Okay, hold on. And hold on. Yeah. So hold on. The last one is where they're something. This one here. I found it. Okay, this is the last part. Okay. And therefore, the opposition-led regime would probably not have social and economic reforms so necessary for this backwards country high on its priority list. So they got what they wanted.
I don't know if I should cry or laugh. It's very, I go from one feeling to another. Really, it's just sometimes you laugh, sometimes you feel like
The
crying.
honesty of
You
this
know,
cable, where they're like, if your interest is for the best of the Afghan people, then you'd support the democratic government back in the 1970s, but it's not in the US interest. And then they also predicted that the regime that would come afterwards would be backwards and have a horrible human rights record. And they said, on balance, it was worth it.
Exactly. I mean, it's in no interest for the US to have the global south to be prosperous. Well, it's a very simple equation for the US. The US has 4% of the world's population and
Mm-hmm.
to rule over the 100%. But then, if you have prosperity in the global south, which is much more populated than Europe and the US, then you have the per capita GDP is going up. So overall GDP is going to be much bigger because there's a much bigger population. So it's about keeping them very poor. Don't bring them education. Education is dangerous. What is really ridiculous is now we actually saying, oh, now with the Taliban, how about the right for women?
But
You know,
this
the,
cable literally said that the rights for women will be worse because we are supporting the worst. Like, they actually confessed that they were supporting highway robbers. Like, they're like
exactly.
bandits and robbers who operate on the highways.
It's just hypocrisy. Whenever they say it's about human rights of women and so on, it's this weapon of human rights. Actually, they're accusing other countries of what they are actually themselves doing.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's not, it's not true. I mean, the problem is that it's when you hijack the narrative, you have media which is completely biased. It's just a propaganda tool, and it's so we just know it well. What can you do? Really, we are a tiny minority trying to expose that, but look at most of people. How they what is happening for them in those countries is very intangible. The only relationship people have with what is happening in Afghanistan is through movies of Rambo.
Yeah.
In a movie like Rambo, you choose, is gonna do terrible things to locals, but at the end, it's gonna turn some kind of romance behind this, and it's always like the Western guy, which is superior, is bringing human rights, or is bringing democracy and so on, which
By arming highway robbers, apparently.
exactly. So the thing is that for people, average people, I'm talking about the US. I mean, you guys tend to travel less than but it's not tangible. When I was in Venezuela in '99, and Chavez was freshly elected, and I saw the foreign meddling. I was in Hong Kong, and I saw the foreign meddling. What do you see? That the problem is that when you are in the middle of a potential civil war, then it's something different.
Mm-hmm.
The US, why no one is opposing the war? I mean, there's not an anti-war movement in the US. It's because you have never lived the war.
Yeah.
In World War II, the US came in when the war was over. It was finished. So, but I'm talking about war in new soil.
Yeah.
Once you are attacked and you have your son, that
Uh-huh.
died in the war, then it's different. It becomes
Oh, yeah.
tangible. For those people, that the global South, they've been oppressed for ages, hundreds of
Centuries.
years. In South America, well, name me one country where there is not a coup. I mean, there were lots of democratically elected government that they were overthrown.
Yeah.
And Asia the same. Now, there was a Arab Spring. Now
That
there's
was
a
all
Asia.
nonsense.
Asia is being attacked, and this is part of the encircling of China strategy. Brzezinski, just how can you attack China? You're gonna attack China through Xinjiang, Tibet, Hong Kong, Taiwan. Then you're gonna attack whoever works with China, Thailand, Myanmar,
Malaysia now.
Malaysia now. Well, this is only the tip of the iceberg. We just hope that there's not going to be an Arab Spring. So you see, it's just all complete hypocrisy. It's just disgusting, just disgusting. Um, so I mean, what can you do? I mean, now we are in a transition. This is what we call the Thucydides trap.
The what
To
trap?
the Thucydides trap. The Thucydides trap is the theory where you have in world history you have many times you have a power which is surpassing raising new power which is surpassing the power in place, right? I give you an example. The last transition was World War One. You had Germany emerging, and you had the British Empire, and so the Brits, the reason of the World War One was they didn't want Germany to become the next superpower.
Mm-hmm.
And Germany, was partnering with the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire, they had access to oil. World War One was the transition from coal to oil. And there was a Baghdad ban. It was from Berlin to Baghdad, and it was access to oil. So you see, that was what we call the Thucydides trap. This transition, and this is what we are living right now. Is China is about to surpassing the U.S., and it's all about this. It's about wanting to contain China, but then Chinese, it's 1.4 billion people. If you are containing China, it means that Chinese people will be denied prosperity,
Yeah,
and so it's just ridiculous.
I know. And what is also really ridiculous is that most people don't realize, but in that little circle in Asia, more people live inside that little circle, but like in Asia than outside it. So this is about this is about maybe a handful of people trying to oppress 7 billion people. And yeah, oh, okay. And here's actually was reported by the Human Rights Watch, which sometimes accidentally tells the truth once in a while.
Well, sometimes they throw you a bone. I mean, once in a while they throw you a bone just because it's just so much like
You can't
uh,
stop reality.
imperialist. It's an imperialist agency. I mean, nothing else really.
Okay,
It's
but look at
it's
this.
Amnesty International. Yep.
Farmers in Pagman district in Kabul province had to stay awake at night to guard their plants from thieving soldiers and police. Um, yeah. Thoughts on this one?
I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised. It's very dirty. It's very, very dirty. So the problem is that when look at just the track record of those revolution meddling, you know, what did it bring?
Nothing.
It brought chaos. It brought civil war. Give me a single example of a revolution, color revolution, instigated by the U.S. that was successful, that brought something positive. Never,
They can't.
never. It brought chaos. It brought civil war. It brought stagnation. I mean, for look at Afghanistan. It's 20 years of stagnation. People dying. Just
Oh
nothing.
yeah.
Really, I mean, it's still backward. It's in 20 years there was no change. Actually, it's worse. It's worse.
Yes.
When it was like a Soviet-backed regime, it was way better, much more modern. Much more democratic. Now it needs to reconstruct itself.
Oh yeah. And here is another thing is that there is two things. The fact that uh, oh, I forgot about this one. So the previous president, I don't know if you know, but according to the either Russian or Tajiki embassy, he literally ran away with bags of cash at $164 million worth of cash. How do you have that much cash?
I mean, you just
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, we know how he has this cash, but he was also fully he was in the he even had US citizenship probably. And uh um yeah, and there's actually the opium, because only 12% of Afghanistan land is cultivating food. You need all of it to do food and zero of it to do opium. But having opium is so profitable that they yeah, like they were not growing, they had a starvation, they're having a starvation crisis because they are not growing enough food to feed its population.
No, it is sad. I mean, actually, the lowest point of production of opium was under the Taliban. You
Really?
know,
Okay, let me check that. Go ahead. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
absolutely. So I don't have exactly the details of
I'm
that,
getting
but
the
yes,
graph. So just
they,
talk a
they
little
did
bit about
fight. They did fight. Because it was ethically it was not good for the Taliban's. There's a so otherwise.
it. Yeah, I found the statistics. So go ahead. Continue to talk.
Do you find it?
Yeah, I'll put it up in just a second.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, so well, maybe we can just mention, what could be Afghanistan from now on. I mean, if they manage to eradicate terrorism, the terrorist cells, because there are some terrorist cells in Afghanistan still in very remote areas. If they manage to do that, well, and there's no meddling, because keep in mind that the US left Afghanistan, but they never really leave. They keep dormant cells that are going to be a disruption.
Oh,
It's the same as Gladio operation in Europe. It's you leave dormant cells, lots of agents. Do you really think that the US would leave after 20 years? The foundation, that they put there is just planting seeds for more disruption. Why
wow.
would they live just like this? So you need to imagine, let's say if tomorrow there's the Belt and Road Initiative, which is so important for Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Well,
See, you're right. Yeah.
was I right? Was I
Yep.
right?
100% right.
Yeah. I'm not. This is common knowledge, but you see, I mean, 2017 and during the Taliban, you see the difference. It's huge difference.
And like I said, only 10% of land in Afghanistan you can grow anything. So every inch of land is needed for food.
Exactly. You see, I mean, you just show a few things, but it is so easy to expose the regime, the puppet regime of being against everything that the US is advocating. I mean, human rights first thing. I mean, opium. I mean, how good is that? Keep in mind that who's suffering directly from this opium trade is the countries from the region.
Oh,
And
yeah.
China is suffering from that. They're doing everything they can, but keep in mind that China is border with Afghanistan, and there is some trade. You have random opium that is going through into China.
Okay, but look at this. Just continue. Look at this. This is a governor, and this is the U.S. backed vice president. Can you? I don't know what to say. And this is a U.S. propaganda outlet, so God knows what happened. I mean, it's horrible. Uh, After he was abducted by a warlord. I mean, just the actual. Yeah, it's, I don't know what to say. Like a lot of it is just horror, and but we don't hear about those horrors because it does not happen to people who have access to CNN, who can write editorials in the Washington Post, and you know what, like things like that.
Well, how much have we talked about Afghanistan in the last 5 to 6 years? It's just
Very little.
very, very little. It's just people are suffering, and there are lots of inconvenient truth. There's just people focus on something else, but Afghanistan is reality, is occupied. In Iraq, now, even though there's the US installed a democracy there in
Kind of.
Iraq, which is not working. Well, you have the whole parliament that voted for the US to leave Iraq.
Yeah.
So you actually impose them a Western style democracy, and they vote for you to leave Iraq, and you stay in Iraq.
Yes, they haven't gone.
Illegal occupation, illegal. I mean, and actually, this is, if you really challenge that, is going against the Constitution. You should, when you go to war, you should vote for going to war.
Yeah.
This is still, this is still under the war of, after 9/11, the war against terrorism. But they have a hard time to define really, why are you in Syria? You were not invited. Russia was invited by Assad, but US was not invited. It's an occupier. So in many cases, this is going against US owns constitution, and so it's extremely anti-democratic, those attacks to those countries. So it's just, what can I say? What can I say? Average people, I mean, just ask people. Most people, they cannot put Afghanistan, Iraq on a map.
No, they can't.
Sadly. So it's not tangible, and we remember, you see people, sadly, a lot of people, they learn about history through Hollywood movies. How people know about Tibet is they watch 7 Years in Tibet.
Oh
Brad,
God, and that guy's a Nazi, Heinrich Heydrich.
yeah, he's a Nazi, but
Yeah,
you
he was
see,
in the SS.
how sad is that? A lot of people in the US, they still believe that the US won the war against Vietnam.
What?
It gives you the level of ignorance of people. Sadly,
Yeah.
and the sense of being for greater good. Oh, we are going to, it's the thing is that the marketing is different. British colonial empire, it would attack other countries, enslave other countries, but they say they were exporting civilization. Now it's a different marketing. We are saying we are going to export uh, human rights and democracy. It's different marketing, but it's exactly the same. It's very brutal. It's brutal. And it comes in different ways. Sometimes it's direct confrontation where you have your soldier on the ground, but sometimes it's hybrid wars. You find you finance the opposition, you send them weapons. You're in Syria, you finance mercenaries, tens of thousands, and you destroy a country.
Yeah. And this is exactly like what happened in Afghanistan right after the Soviets left is exactly what's going to happen to Syria if that government falls, because yeah.
Well, you see, in Syria, Assad, when he's in a crowd, he comes like with no protection. Have you seen pictures of Assad going in a crowd? He's being cheered like no president is being cheered. U.S.
Well,
president.
I see him walking on the street in
Yeah.
Syria without any protection. He's just walking like getting, and so it means he has so much popular support. He doesn't actually have to worry about. Oh, there's one where he goes to this like butcher's house. Were you the one who told me that story?
Oh no, but
Okay, so he goes to this butcher's house. So the butcher has like a big butcher's knife, and he's like cutting some lamb kebab like this.
Yeah.
And in America, you would not be able to like do that in front of. They would not let you. They're afraid you're going to kill him. But then he like cuts up kebab, and Assad eats it, and he's literally like, this guy has a huge knife, and nothing happens to him because he has. I mean, no American president would ever feel safe like this, like going to a butcher's house like that.
Yeah, I just want to add something. I mean, we usually we mention like the wars, those colored revolution, how they destroy countries around the world. I would say that the ultimate war is a US dollar. It's the US dollar hegemony.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's very simple. What happens that the US has a trade deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that countries like China has huge reserve of US dollar. The normal process is to recycle. It's like a Ponzi scheme. You need to recycle always just back to the country. So China, if it was going to play the game of the US, would be to recycle into the US economy. But China is doing something very different. What China is doing is recycling its excess of US dollar into tangible assets. Tangible assets are the Belt and Road Initiative. So by doing that, China with one stone, it kills many birds. The
So is
Belt and
that how China was able to pay off Pakistan's IMF loan?
Oh, it's helping. This is a way to help. It's when you have to restructure loan, China sometimes can help because the IMF loans are predators. IMF and World Bank loans comes under conditions, and the interest rates are much higher. So IMF actually, it's part of the capitalist agenda. It's about how you can hijack through to a country, because IMF comes in, and some conditions are that you need to open your state-owned assets to private institution. How you can sell the jewels of state jewels, and then it requires sometimes some changes in terms of democracy, or opening to NGOs that ultimately are going to disrupt your sovereignty. So you see what China is doing. It's doing it's doing giving loans and helping in building in infrastructures, but with no conditions. And so what is happening, what is doing is that Belt and Road Initiative is going to help shifting the center of gravity of the world's economy. So you make your neighbors prosperous, it's going to bring stability, and ultimately it's going to bring back, it's going to be benefit also China in terms of its prosperity. And it's stabilized too. There's terrorism in the area in Pakistan. There's lots of terrorism, in all Central Asia. Keeping in mind that the terrorism in Pakistan is also financed by the US. Balochistan
All
separatist
of it.
groups are financed by the US. So you see, China, it's by doing that, it's actually not playing in the game of the US like the Ponzi scheme. So what is happening is that if the US dollar hegemony falls overnight, it's going to be a collapse of the US economy. You would have hyperinflation. The Weimar Republic had hyperinflation because the currency was not global, and you keep on printing, you create hyperinflation. It's not happening right now. Now the US is printing trillions of dollars, and it's not happening. There's not hyperinflation, although there might be between 5 to 10%, which is dangerous. Well, but it's not. Why no hyperinflation? Because the US dollar, it's a global currency. So, but the day that it's no more global currency, well, you create hyperinflation, and the whole system doesn't work. The US is living. It's has a very high standard of living. Why? Because it's who's paying that? It's the global South. It's China.
Exploitation. I mean, the reason what it's like trickle down poverty. So in Congo, you have to have child slaves mining your cobalt, but the thing is, the processed goods that the U.S. floods, they're going to charge more. So no matter how much labor you do in Congo, you're never ever going to catch up to the processed goods because of the way the trade deficits work.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you see, I mean, this is ultimately it's about how those elites, they can keep having that power. And then there is the military-industrial complex. If there's no war, I mean, how are we going to make money? I mean, keep in mind, we are talking about $1 trillion into the military-industrial complex per year. Imagine what the last 20 years. China has put that money into infrastructure.
Yeah.
And then now the US is trying to copy China. It's like build back a better world. I don't know what it is. Just
Build back better. Yeah.
yeah. Well, but again, it's trying to copy China. But if you really dig into this, it's into this bill. There's very little for infrastructure. There's very
Yeah.
little. It's actually not even. It's about repairing what is existing. It's not about building what is not existing. It's just repairing because everything the roads are collapsing. I mean, in China has they're building right now a speed train that would be at 600 miles per hour,
That's
fast.
almost like plane level.
It's the speed of a plane. I mean, you see, but this is going to benefit everyone. Chinese, they have a say. There is a saying is that if you want to become rich, build up a road.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so true. It's really like don't people Freedom and democracy, you don't eat freedom of
No.
democracy. When you wake up in the morning, you first, most of the people, what they think about is how I can make a living, how I can make money and bring
Mhm.
food on the table. In the US, they say, oh, you know what, we are going to sell you freedom and democracy. Well, okay, you're homeless. What does democracy means to you when you're homeless?
Nothing.
When you go to Africa and you're trying to sell democracy, I mean, this is not what I mean, people, actually, when you look at protests around the world, 90, I don't know, 95% of people, it's not about democracy. It's about more, I mean, materialistic things.
Exactly.
The French Revolution, people came out in the streets. It was related to the price of bread.
Hmm.
Inflation was related to inflation. Now you see movies about the French Revolution, and it's like, oh, we want to vote. It's not
No.
true. Most of people, it's about realistic thing. What people want is I want to put my kids into a good school.
Yeah.
I want health coverage.
Or just school in general, like not working in a mine.
No, exactly. You want a better future. You want to improve your living conditions.
And that is the one thing you can't do if a foreign company or country is just sucking out all your resources.
Yeah, it's just about taking the resources but keeping you poor.
Yeah.
Keeping you poor, less education, poor, life expectancy low, yeah. I mean, you don't want like over 1 billion Africans to have a much higher life expectancy. Well, in reality, when you analyze what are human rights, the definitions, the West has different definitions from Asia. Human rights, it's about life expectancy. Well, look at life expectancy in the US. It's been going slightly down. That's the only country in the world where it's going down. I mean, you should question that. And there is a basic human right. The rest of the world is going up. Access universal healthcare. Well, it's the only country in the world that doesn't have universal healthcare.
Yeah.
I mean, this is nuts. And when you look at, you do a survey, 80% of Americans want universal healthcare. Why it is not translated into your democracy? Because it's a big democracy. It's
Yeah.
completely rigged. How can you explain? You say, well, by the people, for the people, of the people, all these BS. Sorry. Uh, how can you explain how representative is the Senate and the Congress when you have so many millionaires? Nancy Pelosi, 140 million net
Okay.
worth.
Angelo, we have one question from the audience. Olympia Logic asks thoughts on Gene Sharp and his nonviolent protests.
Well, it's just it's part of Gene Sharp. He is a U.S. creation. Actually, Gene Sharp he was behind the 1989 color revolution. Tiananmen Square, but
Yeah.
it was a color revolution. So he was on the ground, and basically he created a playbook of a color revolution, and this is applied everywhere around the world.
Yeah.
They call it non-violent, but in reality, it becomes very violent, extremely violent. So it's just a playbook. But it's part of the whole strategy to do a color revolution. This playbook is part of it, but there are many, many entities that intervene in a color revolution. You have National Endowment for Democracy. You have the playbook of Gene
Open
Sharp,
societies.
Open
Uh,
Society, George Soros. You have USAID. USAID tend to come after. So
yeah.
any National Endowment for Democracy, it's the beginning. So you have other NGOs or US institution that comes after, to better control this fake democracy. Because in reality, once you have intervention, meddling, it's a fake democracy.
Oh yeah. And what often happens is that people don't realize. I often believe the color revolutions are just the show for the American public, because ultimately the real thing happens with super violence that comes in really quickly. Like you have
Oh yeah.
lots of death squads, murder, whatever.
Well, I'm just going to give you an example. I was in Hong Kong in 2019 during the protest, US backed protest. I mean, they were all financed by US. It was you could see like CIA agents in the streets. I mean, it was so obvious. They were training the protesters and so on. So it was extremely violent. After 1 year, there was not a single death. No one died in Hong
Not
Kong,
from the police, no.
not from the police. And then, if you look at the yellow vest in France, well, you have 7 people that lost a hand. You have
Wow.
I think 9 or 11 people that died, and you have over 15 people that lost an eye.
Wow.
I come up with facts. I can give you all the information, but I followed that. There was not even one policeman suspended in France. Not
Ooh.
even one. You can check it. You can check it. And it was extremely violent from the police side. The police side. When I'm in China, I'm not afraid of the police. The police is there. It's a real civil servant. Is there to serve you really. Well, when you are in the West, I tend to be scared.
Yeah.
I would be scared of the police in the US, but not in China.
Yeah.
Because he's a civil servant. I mean, if in cases, there was a case actually in Hong Kong of police beating up citizens, hiding. I mean, they were hid, like 3 policemen. I think they were charged between 5 to 7 years in prison. Tell me a single. I mean, you in the US, you need to have a huge coverage of media, and the person needs to die, who was this, the one that died, the African American that died, what was his name?
There have been
I
too
can
many.
breathe. I can breathe. The one.
Oh, Eric Garner.
No, another one. Yeah, but you mean the policeman?
No, no,
That's
the policeman.
yeah,
Oh, you're talking about last year. George Floyd, and then the
yeah.
policeman is Derek Chauvin.
Yeah, but this is isolated case. It's because there was a huge coverage. But this is an isolated cases. But how many people? How many times you have police that actually, they really go to jail for those acts? Not much, really.
I've
So
seen one case or two, maybe.
yeah, uh, and then he was recuperating. It was this BLM movement. He was recuperating. I mean, now people that supported the BLM movement, they need to ask themselves what this BLM movement achieved. What did he achieve?
Not
I mean,
much.
of course, I'm against racism, and I'm
No, no, no.
against
It practically speaking, nothing. It's been going on for 8 years, and not one reform. Not, because a lot of it is based on the idea that if you go out in public and protest, and the government will care, but this government does not care, and people can't seem to process that.
I've been living in China for 25 years, so I've seen protests. In China, there are hundreds of thousands of protests every year. The right to protest is in the Chinese constitution. You can protest. What you are not allowed to do is to create
Like,
to create chaos, and to be go against I mean, really,
yeah,
like, to overthrow the
the Hong
state.
Kong protesters behind some university had dangerous explosives that could kill just they had so many explosives hiding that they hidden yeah, that's of course illegal in every country.
No, but I mean, close to my home in Hong Kong, 500 meters from my home, there was a bomb. They put a bomb. It blew up a public restroom.
Wow.
It was not a huge one, but it was terrorism. But we didn't talk. It was never covered by the West. All this training in Hong Kong protests was the financing, the support, the training was done by the US. They discovered in a university thousands of petrol bombs.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yep, the petrol bombs at the
Yeah.
universities.
It's just there's so much to say about Hong Kong, and actually, what actually saved Hong Kong is that Hong Kong now is a national security law.
What
But keep in
exactly
mind,
is that law? There's a lot of lies in the West, but very little. They don't actually ever put the text of the law for you to read or anything like that.
Well, just to give you an idea, I mean, it's a light version of what you have in England and in the US. In the US, you have much less free. It's much more tougher laws when it comes to national security laws, and you have many more. You have many, like probably the Patriot Act is just one of the latest, but you have many laws, the national security laws in the US that are much tougher. So what are they for? It's just for protecting national sovereignty, and foreign meddling. You don't want people on the ground being financed by foreign governments to overthrow local government. I mean, as simple as that. And actually, when you look at the Hong Kong national security law, it was according to the basic law, which is the mini constitution of Hong Kong. Article 23, it was supposed to be enacted after 1997. It just took them almost 25 years to enact this law. So it was just a law that was supposed to be enacted.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of times the way the West covers this, I've seen this often too, where they overblow violence on one side and just kind of like they're like, oh, this guy. This is my classic headline that I always share with people because it's so stark. It's like Maduro cracks down on opposition for bombing the parliament, and you're like, yeah, that's not a crackdown. That's a legit. So you see that. They only kind of share, they kind of whitewash the violence on one side and amp up the allegations of violence on the other side. So you're left with literally an inverted mirror.
Yeah, well, when you look at the Gene Sharp non-violent protest, the purpose is actually to provoke as much as possible the police to push to a reaction. But because what the protesters need, they need some content to actually demonize the police. This is the strategy. So they attack you. The protesters attack with the petrol bombs, and then the police, they actually respond with sticks. And somehow the police has the legitimate power to use violence. Ultimately, I mean, if you really look at the definitions of what the police should be doing. So what the protesters get is actually some content. What I mean by content is video, pictures, of police hitting back. And what they can do is they can use this content in the media and it's in the propaganda. That's what they do. They need that. They're desperate, and very often, like in Hong Kong, you had probably 50% of the fake reporters that were actually they were there just to either to protect the protesters or to help in providing like material support in terms of content.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find this. But there's a video where I actually saw. Let me see if I can. I can't probably find it now. But there's a video where I actually found the police actually, like in some of the other countries, just kind of backing down, like driving away, and from the protesters, and some like really strange things were going on. So, yeah. But they but Americans can expect every police to act like their police, and often they don't. And so and okay, so let me see, does anyone have any questions for Angelo before we wrap this up?
Okay, I'd like to share something with you.
Of course.
In Hong Kong, I have first-hand experience. I was cleaning up the streets, and they threw petrol bombs at me. Not sorry, petrol bombs, stones. Sorry, I was just
okay. Share this. Hold on, give me
I sent you the video. So basically, we were a group of citizens. What I call the silent majority in Hong Kong, which is not politicized. A lot of them, they would come in the streets, either in the evening or early in the morning, 6 a.m. in the morning, and they would clean up the streets. And I would say, when it comes to me, it was a personal therapy. When you clean up the streets, is a good way. Just you don't resort to violence, but you want them to destroy your city, so you just clean up, keep on cleaning up. So one evening we were cleaning up the streets, and we had those rioters just coming after us and throwing stones at us. Throwing stones.
Okay. Okay. I got the video. Hold on.
So you see, I'm in green there. You know the one in green there. And actually, we are cleaning up the street, and they're coming after us, and they're throwing stones at us.
Oh, I see it. No, the wow.
And actually, what happens is that you don't see the whole picture, but there are probably 200 that are about to come. Later on, they actually were running after us. You know, you see some more coming, but
Yeah.
later on, they at the end of the video, they start running towards us, and then we had to escape. But it just gives you an idea. I mean, we are cleaning up the streets, and they come after us, and they throw stones at us. So
Wow.
I mean, people, I did face the writers many times. Really, I had death threats. It was terrible. But like I just didn't. I couldn't accept those people that wanted. They want. You know what they wanted? They called it mutual destruction. They had a slogan saying, "Well, if we burn, you will burn with us."
Oh, I see now. Okay. Wow.
But they were, they were quite far. We wouldn't take the risk. The distance. It's actually you cannot judge much the distance, but actually it's very far. So they couldn't the stones couldn't really hit us. But it's still a danger.
Oh, it did. I mean, there was some man who got a brick thrown at him and he died. So
They had some sticks and so on, but there was like a daily occurrence in Hong Kong. The problem is that they at some point we didn't dare to speak up. A lot of people didn't dare to speak up because if you spoke against them, you would be beaten up. So basically, they're advocating freedom of speech. They say, "Oh, we don't have freedom of speech," but actually, they were the one actually suppressing regular citizens of their freedom of speech because you had to back them. And actually, there's a dividing strategy. It's like
how does it work?
you are either with us or you are against us. So you need to declare yourself.
Mhm.
It's a way to polarize the whole society.
Ah.
We even actually wanted shops to declare themselves to be pro-Chinese, pro-China, or against China. So you had a circle. They called them the yellow circle and blue circle.
Uh-huh.
So the yellow, which were against Beijing, they would buy only in yellow shops. So you had a huge list of yellow shops, and if you were pro Beijing, they would destroy your shops. Just to give you an idea, you know what they did? There's a pro Beijing entrepreneur who has the franchise of Starbucks. I mean, Starbucks is not Chinese, it's American. But because this entrepreneur declared that he criticized the protesters.
Okay, sorry. Okay, give me one. Go ahead. Sorry. I found the one from this color revolution where the police, you can see the protesters were claiming, this is from somewhere in Grodno, Belarus. This is from last year. The protesters, how do I play this? Okay. Let me try this again. Sorry. The police were doing the opposite of the US police by backing away from the protesters. So I found it. They're backing away. And the protesters were going, and they were trying not to run over the protesters. So it was the opposite of the US, and as to not provoke the incident.
Yeah. It's just like this. I mean, you saw how many times you had a police car, in the US that would rush into the protesters.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And here and then the weirdest thing, and in Hong Kong too, you've seen so many tricks, and it's always to get the foreign media to report whatever nonsense you want them to report without actually thinking too hard. And does anyone? Oh, okay. Okay, we have one question for you. I hope this is okay. Do you think the Gladio left behind by the US in Afghanistan will sponsor atom terrorism in Xinjiang?
That's a very, very good question. Actually, I just talked to an expert in security. There's probably still ETIM terrorists still in Afghanistan, in very remote areas. The estimate is probably around 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there are going to be some cells, the same as Gladio operation for sure. The only thing is that how the Taliban will keep their words, because Taliban, promised China and the rest of the region that they will actually not be the Taliban of 2001,
Yeah.
harboring terrorists. They will
A
do
lot of
everything.
them have from 2001 have died, and this is I'll send you this report later, but this seems like a second wave that came in response to the way the Pashtuns were treated in not Peshawar is in Pakistan. What the border city probably
Pashtuns, Pashtuns are in Pakistan, in
and
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, but I can't remember the name of this city in Afghanistan. I keep thinking Peshawar, but that's in Pakistan. But the one like right across the border, uh, they had. So this was a new movement created because of all the government thuggery, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, but there will be some meddling. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, so it's going to be the same. Gladio operation. They are going to disrupt Afghanistan. Actually, there are already talks about. There's the son of Masood.
Oh
This
yeah.
warrior.
Oh, he's okay. Oh my God. Oh yes, he's
Probably
written.
going
They
to get
allowed
support.
him
Yeah.
to write an op-ed in the Washington Post. And the funny thing is that they've been funding him for 50 years, and if you cannot win a country after being funded for 50 years, you're probably bad. And his uncle was the vice president under Hamid Karzai, and he was caught stealing $54 million. So they don't need any help. They should use that $54 million if they, well, whatever. Like, yes.
But in there's a saying in Afghanistan is uh, you can basically hire warriors. I mean, you just it's not. I mean, the country is so poor. You have people that you can buy them as mercenaries. It's very easy to recruit people just to fight your wars. It's
Yeah.
so if you're pouring, it goes a long
Yeah.
way. If you're pouring like 10 million, 20 million, you know how many fighters you can get. I mean, it's very money is powerful in those regions.
Yeah. And yeah, this is the editorial you're talking about, right?
Yeah. There are a few articles, but they.
This
Uh,
one, he wrote it. I guess. Um, but this part that's really disturbing is uh, I'm ready to follow in my father's footsteps. Uh, his father was a terrible person. They did lots of gang rapes. Just anything you can think, like they were like the Contras. Anything you can think of that's bad, they did it.
yeah,
They
yeah, but
threw acid in women's faces, literally for going to school. Like anything that's bad you can think of, they did it. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's dramatic, but sometimes the ultimate prize to be of a human right abuser is actually to become a Nobel Peace Prize. Actually, if you really look at who got the Nobel Peace Prize, I mean, the Dalai Lama got the Nobel Peace Prize. It's probably the worst in the whole list. Under the
Worse
Dalai
than
Lama,
Kissinger?
well, worse than who's?
Henry Kissinger.
Oh yeah, I don't. Did he get the Nobel
Yeah.
Peace Prize? Oh, well, he tells you, he gives you an idea. So you need to be really careful on whoever gets the Nobel Peace Prize. So you see, Dalai Lama was actually under his reign. There was slavery. It was the last place on earth that there was slavery legal. It was the worst. Actually, it makes you think. It makes Saudi Arabia look like Disneyland compared to how Tibet was under Dalai Lama.
Yeah, we showed a video of somebody wearing a human bone apron last time. That was the first video. Yeah, it was terrible. Um, so for me, I always look at historically. Like for me, it's the first thing I do is, okay, what's the class character of these people? Are they been the oppressors or the oppressed? Like, and what are they fighting for? Because no one fighting for democracy is vague. Like Mandela did not fight for democracy. He fought to end apartheid. Gandhi fought to end British rule. So if they don't have something they're fighting for, like take our country back, if it's vague, those are the red flags that need to go up, because there's always, when you have a revolutionary, there's all like, we know what Che was fighting for, Cuba Libre, but we don't know like, yeah, that's the first red flag, is, or they don't want to tell you what they're fighting for, because it's usually something that you wouldn't support, like to have their heroin business back or something, like Ahmad Massoud's son.
Well, there's a very easy exercise is just look at the follow the money. I mean,
Yeah.
really, I mean, 95% of what we do. I mean, if you want to better understand the reality of a country, is just follow the money. You know who receive what and who's backing, and this is what we do whenever we're covering Southeast Asia, and it's very easy and it's obvious. The advantage of National Endowment for Democracy is that they openly put the who they fund and how much funding.
Yeah, and yeah, they literally do that. And what you realize is, all of these people are don't actually have anything to fight for, and they don't. Oh, well, for me, the funniest thing is the Thailand example. Thanathorn, he's a billionaire.
Yeah.
Why did he have to hire a lobbyist in Washington? Because apparently money cannot buy the Thai government, so he needs to hire mercenaries to get him the government seat. So, like, you should always be suspicious of people who don't have anything other, any real, like, who won't tell you what they're really fighting for.
Yeah, but actually, he was caught. Thanaton was caught by funding his own party. He
Oh,
actually said he was a loan, but you cannot, you're not allowed. So I mean, in France, sometimes what they do is that they give loan and they don't, and then after they cancel the loan,
ah,
it's a good way. It's a good way to hide the illegal funding. So Thanaton, they dissolved this party because that's what he did. And again, what happens that if the military are actually opposing that, it's because this is going against democracy principles. So when you look at Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, which is a completely hijacked, she's completely hijacked by Western powers. It's exactly the same. You have money meddling, and at some point, why you have the army taking over? It's because it's going against the national interest. It's no more democracy when you have the hijacking of a democracy from all parts. I'm talking about media. I'm talking about all those fake NGOs getting money. And again, when you if you throw like 10, 20 million US dollar in a country like Myanmar, you can completely hijack the democracy.
yep,
So you see, I mean, I'm not for military, I'm not for taking sides, I'm just for exposing. And I think the ultimate, what is extremely important, if you are anti-imperialist, is really look at sovereignty first.
yes,
But not ideology. I think a lot of leftists are just stuck on ideology. Oh, I'm socialist, and they get into the theory of Marxists and so on. Well, you know what? I was elected in Switzerland as a socialist, and but I don't push it too much. Why?
yes,
It's not about this. I think ultimately, if people have sovereignty, and there's a real democracy, actually, it tends to be socialist.
yeah. Oh, usually,
It.
eh,
So you shouldn't force it. This is why people sometimes, like in Thailand, the opposition actually, it's they call themselves socialists and leftists, but in reality, they are backed by a billionaire and by imperial powers.
yes,
So be careful. Sometimes Viktor Orban is better than in Hungary is better than those fake socialists. You see what I mean?
yeah,
So I would be, when it comes to Hungary, I would be for Orban, even though I'm socialist. You see what I mean? Why? Well, there's also one thing which is really important, is that people, they are completely ignorant when it comes to this new left, which is identity politics.
yeah,
All BS, it's all BS. The real fight is social, is class struggle. That is the fight. That
yeah,
is the fight. When those leftists, they come and they come with this old thing about I mean, I don't know, LGTB, black, white, and so on, divide. It's the whole dividing thing. They're playing in the hands of the elites.
yep,
And it's so stupid. It's dividing people. First, I think that the ultimate war is anti-imperialism. If you do that, then people can work out their own system. But don't come up with being stuck with the ideology. Sometimes, what they call far right governments, they can be more socialist than the one that proclaim themselves being socialist.
Yeah.
I give you an example. France. I've been following France. Well, you see, I'm not for Marine Le Pen. I mean, we all have bad choices. There's bad choices everywhere in France. They all, it's the same as the US. At the end, you are going to have choices which are really, it's a minor evil. It's just not what you want. But uh, the socialist move party in France is more right wing than Marine Le Pen, which is extreme right wing. Well,
Yeah.
labeled. So
Well,
be careful about the label they give.
yeah. The one in France is anti. I mean, the
And
way Marie Le Pen, it's weird, but I kind of see what you're saying. As for what I've noticed is that if they have sovereignty, all you need to do is translate Lenin's collected works and mail it to them, and automatically within 5 years you'll get a pretty socialistic, or at least a social democracy. That's all you need to do. Like, you don't need to do anything other than mailing people that. Okay, so we have one question for you. Is the
oh,
Shanghai Cooperation Organization likely to get functioning BIS and SWIFT alternatives in order to revoke the US dollar's reserve currency soon?
well, she's asking some good questions there. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the
I
Shanghai,
don't know anything about this. Can you tell me?
there's probably Iran is might join this group. It's a Central Asia plus China.
Uh-huh.
It's becoming very powerful. It's a good way just to counterbalance NATO, and there's probably they are I mean, those countries are trying to find solutions to bypass the US dollar. So in reality, when you look at the transactions between China and Russia, most transactions now are not dealt in US dollar. So the de-dollarization in the area is in this part of the world has started. There's a deal between Iran and China. It's 400 billions US dollars in 25 years, and it's nothing is going to be in US dollar because of the sanctions on Iran. So Iran cannot deal on US dollar, and it's going to be they are going to use some swap techniques. China is going to give some credit, so somehow they'll find a solution. So yes, the idea is to bypass the SWIFT. And actually, this will further accelerate the de-dollarization. So you see, those sanctions, those are measures by the US. What is happening is that there are countermeasures that actually becomes opportunities for the rest of the world and China. I give you an example. Like so the SWIFT thing, the sanctions. What China is doing is accelerating their currency, the cryptocurrency, local cryptocurrency. So they are accelerating. When you do sanctions, when it comes to semiconductors,
Mm-hmm.
well, China, what they don't do? You do sanctions on us? Well, we are going to invest 10, 20 billions into this industry. And from a setback, it becomes an opportunity. You
Yeah.
see? So, and again, just right now, it's a global world when it comes to trade. You cannot decoupling. You need to ask yourself who it will damage. Decoupling, if overnight the US is not buying from China, imagine the inflation. What do you have to do? Do you think you can do that uh, overnight in the US? It's impossible. There's a huge difference between the USSR and China. USSR, there was a Cold War, but USSR was no match when it came to economy. It was a
Yeah.
weak economy. It was
I mean,
not
it
as
was the third world country. I mean, there's part, like, they did leaps and bounds, but it was not an equal ever, no matter how much the US liked to pretend it was. It was usually the US attacking these poor peasants.
No, exactly. Well, again, it was always about the risk to have a social system that works, that will actually be, it's at first it's embarrassing for the US, but actually it's a threat for the US because, well, you look at the situation in the US, average people, the way they are living conditions, take 30 years, in the US, 30 years ago, you could have a couple and only the man the husband was working and they could have kids and they could buy a house. Well, look at the situation right now. A
Even
lot of people, a
two people
lifetime.
working full time
Exactly.
can't pay rent.
Exactly. So you see, the danger is to have a socialist system that works.
Yeah,
Another system. And again, China is not it's not. It's not exactly a socialist, if you follow the whole theory about socialism. But it's they have found a system that works for them.
yeah,
With a very strong socialist characteristic. uh, and that's a danger. That's a danger because then China has been lifting out
800 million or more.
800 million people out of extreme poverty. That's the biggest achievement in human history.
Yes,
And if it keeps on like this, imagine from 20 years from now, a stagnant economy, EU and US, and China keep raising. Well,
yeah.
your system is not going to work. It's not, I mean, you are going to have a revolution there, really.
Okay, somebody asked this question. We both can answer this. Will India and Pakistan be able to solve the Kashmir issue? Iran, Pakistan, and India can be a very strong alliance. Oddly enough, Iran actually has a better relationship with India than Pakistan for a variety of strange reasons, which I don't exactly understand. But not with the current Modi government will this issue be so. I don't ever. What is the solution really?
Okay. I think when it comes to geopolitics of India, you need to keep in mind that very often people tend to use the term ally,
Yeah.
U.S. ally. In reality, the U.S. doesn't have ally.
Oh,
Only a few, very
hostages.
few. They are hostages. Germany, there are 30,000 U.S. soldiers in Germany. It's still occupied.
Yeah.
They're tapping Merkel phone. So this is not how you treat an ally. Japan has 50,000 U.S. Army personnel.
And they've
It's
requested
still,
thousands of times for them to leave.
no. So then it's attacking lots of allies. It wants to do color revolution. I mean, see what it did to Egypt. See,
Mubarak, yeah.
they still put pressure. Vietnam is supposed to be a U.S. ally, but they're trying to do color revolution in Vietnam. The meddling.
Now?
Absolutely. There's
Wow.
NED is very active. You can check on ned.org. It's very active in Vietnam. So you see the lots of hostages. So now look at India. India, why it is following? It's it's on a short leash, by the US, because US could overthrow. It could do so easily a color revolution in India. It would be so easy.
Well, the thing about it is that the Modi government, the only reason that the BJP is in power is because all these Silicon Valley tech bros have been like pouring
Exactly.
untold number of money into these like weird NGOs. So before then, BJP didn't even have 4 or 5 seats. So also they're actually not that popular, and they had like there's a farmer protest. So yeah, like
Yeah.
it's like that to get rid of them. So the BJP needs to go, but that's why they're hostage. Okay, hold on. Can you spell the name of the Vietnam Color Revolution attempt maker?
There's not a single, there's not a single person. There's a few. There's actually. You can follow Luna Oy. Luna
Okay.
Oy. Okay,
Yeah.
if you follow Luna Oy, actually she talks about this. The NED actually funded a gay person.
Oh, that
And
was the Pride Parade in Okay, now I Okay,
yeah,
that was
yeah.
okay, got it now.
I mean, it's just because they're using identity politics,
Yeah.
and actually at first, Vietnamese they welcome, like LGBT. They don't care, like I mean, most of the world don't care about this. It's a sexual preference. It's nothing else, right? But they welcome this candidate. But then they found out that actually it was funded by NED. So I mean, for Vietnamese, I mean, it's just they're well aware of the NED meddling in the region. So she did expose this candidate, and actually she's herself, Luna Oil, she's herself LGTB, and she was very angry because she feels that I'm LGTB and you are actually hijacking my movement. People are not going to vote for you because you're LGTB. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't play on this identity politics. You are they are going to vote for you because of what you are going to deliver. Or because of your program. So there are many cases in the whole region. There's not a single country where there's not NED. So when it
Except
comes
Saudi
to
Arabia for some odd reason.
so so it gets me back to the question, because I did this a bit of diversion. So the relationship between India and Pakistan would be so much better if the US was not playing them against each other. So
Yeah.
India is being used the same as Israel is being used by the US in the whole Middle East, the same as Colombia is being used in South America, to be the police. I mean, who was in the Haiti coup?
The
Uh, uh,
Colombian mercs.
so you see, they're trying to use India as the Israel of the region. And so India secret services, actually, they're being very active. When it comes to Balochistan, actually they support Balochistan separatist terrorist movement is actually they are the secret services, Indian secret services
Oh,
behind
the
this.
Raw? Okay, I did not know that.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. There's also something really strange happening with the Taliban and Modi that I can't figure out, but there's a lot of dealing with this new thing, but that's for another day. And thank you so much for joining us. And please hit like and subscribe, and also check out Angelo's show. It's called Inception. No, no, no.
Well, I actually check New Atlas. The New Atlas, it's not my channel. It's Brian Berletic's channel, but it's just amazing.
He is.
I mean, he's got so much knowledge. So I mean, just follow him, and we do a weekly show. It's called Inflection.
Inflection, not inside. Okay, inflection. Yep. So yeah, I learned about I would not have learned about Malaysia without that show. It's really good. It's one of my favorite new channels, actually.
He's amazing. He's my favorite too. It's just amazing. I mean, Brian Belletic used to write under the pen name of Tony Catalucci, and I've been following for more than 10 years.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And yeah, look. So New Atlas, we'll put it up here. And thanks again for joining us. And we will be back like another day. So hope everyone has a great day. Bye bye.